Hello. Free rides for seniors. No, I'm sorry.
Didn't they just take that away from the CTA? The free rides are gone or something like that?
They took away, they threshold it if you make so much money. Which I was going to say when Ron called, I was going to say that I think that this thing by Cullerton is saying that there's a threshold. If you make so much money, they're going to put it. I think he even said he doesn't think it'd be a 5%. He was throwing a bait out there. He said I think it's going to be 5%.
Well, let me see if I understand this, because let's just say that you work for some government entity and you retire at age 50. Is there a possibility you're drawing 100%, 80% of your salary while you're in retirement and paying no taxes on that? Is that?
We're not paying any state taxes.
State taxes.
Yeah, you're not paying 3%. Well, 5% now. They raised it to 5%.
Okay, so, but I mean, are there state pensions, Tim, where, hey, I retire at 50 and I was making $50,000 a year, and I'm going to continue to make $50,000 without working, even though I'm able-bodied and capable?
Yep.
And I would pay no state income tax on that money?
You will not. There is no state income tax on retiree money, and whether you're public or private. So if you have an IRA and you retire at 59 and a half and collect your IRA, you do not pay a state income tax. So if you're 50 years old, you got 30 years in the state pension, and you retire at 50, and your pension is $100,000, you do not pay income. You do not pay state income tax.
That's a heck of a retirement package.
It's a very nice. It's a very nice retirement package. Why they did it, I don't know. I think he's throwing something out there. He is a master.
Mm-hmm.
John Cullerton is a master. He is one of the masters I've ever seen. The way that he spins things and the way that he talks. I think he comes from that Cullerton family.
And tell me and our listeners again who John Cullerton is.
He's the president of the Senate.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the president of the Senate.
And he is a Democrat.
He is a Democrat. He's the president of the Senate. I'm trying to find this on
so
right now.
It sounds to me, though, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a Democrat actually maybe proposing something that sounds a little fiscally responsible.
No, it is. I mean, I think he's throwing it out there to see it. It's really, if you think about it. Well, I wanted to tell you real fast.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at the Park District from 1982 to 1993.
Mm-hmm.
When I quit in 1993, I had $26,000 in my pension. I was making about $40,000 a year. I took that money out of my pension. I rolled it into an IRA, built it all the way up to $175,000, and we know what happened in the last 10 years. It's back down to nothing. Had I left it where it's at now, in a year and a half, I could retire and get 30% or 40%. I'm sorry, because I had 10 years in. I could get 40% of my pay for the rest of my life. So let's say it was 40. Say I was making $40,000, I get 40% of that. I would be getting $16,000 a year from age 50 to age 30 if I would have stayed in the state pension. That would if I would have left it, but obviously I'm not too bright because I took it and put it in the stock market, which seemed like the right thing to do at the time. So that's just to show you how bad. I was in a state pension. So 93 I would have left. I would have left my money in there until 2012, and I would have gotten 40% of $16,000 a year. So in 10 years I would have got $160. In 20 years I would have got $320,000 for $26,000 of my money contributed into a pension plan. What's the problem? And I would have got a 4% of the cost of COLA, as Ron had said. Substantial.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I just didn't. I figured I would do better with the stock, and I did do well with the stock market for a while. But it would have behooved me, now being more older and wiser, to have left it in the pension. That's how bad these pension plans really are. There is no pension plan in the private sector like this.
And the pension plans are set up with, hey, this is what the return is regardless of what the market does.
It's a fixed annuity. Yeah.
So,
it's a fixed annuity.
So if the money if they're investing it in places and the market goes down like it has, and it's been a rough market, they're still guaranteeing you or the money to the people regardless.
Yeah, because really what it is, it's basically an annuity. It's a fixed annuity, which is like bonds. They're projected at a small rate of return. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to. It's not based on the stock market, is it on the bond market?
Okay.
So it's pretty much a 3% or 4%. They don't invest it in Microsoft. They don't buy necessarily stocks. Some mutual funds that they do buy. So it is. But the city, the problem is the state and the city have not been contributing what they had committed to do. They've borrowed that money. This goes back to this Davis-Bacon, where I have said if you work for the union, you want to join a union, then you be in a union health and welfare plan. Real simple. Every month, the county, the city, the state writes a check to the union. Let the union tell Paul, you know what, Paul, you can't retire at 50. You got to wait till you're 60. You know what I mean? I'm not picking on you.
No. You know, it's interesting because you hear legislators always talk about, legislators talking about kicking the can down the road. And it just sounds like, hey, you know, we need to get these people to take the jobs in the government sector. Back then, you really didn't make a lot of money in a salary. So they said, oh, we'll give it to you on the back end. And they kick the can down the road, and now the bill's due.
well, Cullerton actually, what he does is he quotes, he goes into Jim Edgar. He takes Jim Edgar, who was the governor, and he's now getting $130,000 a year as a state pension. He was a Secretary of State. He was a former governor. I don't think I'm not taking a shot at Jim Edgar, but I don't think he's ever worked for the private sector ever. Before he retired as governor. Now he's probably on some boards. He's getting $130,000 a year and pays no income tax to the state of Illinois, and that's all public money. So I think, again, like I said, I don't care for Cullerton, but I got to say, I read this. This is pretty cool what he's talking about. Edgar got pensions from the public, and he's not paying any taxes on it. Well, why shouldn't he pay taxes? Why should that be exempt?
Right.
But then the argument the other way is that all private pensions, any kind of pension plan, is exempt from state income tax.
You know, that takes me back. Let's tie that into last week when we were talking about what was going on up in Wisconsin and other things. And it was that idea of the sacred cow. Everyone says we have to get smarter. We all have to give. We all have to have shared sacrifice. Just don't touch my stuff. I think what Cullerton's proposing is a perfectly good idea. That alone is not going to solve any problem, but that's just one piece of the equation.
It's going to bring $1.6 billion into the state annually, okay? And I think, I get to read and look at really what he said. I like to see what he actually said, what he's quoted as saying. Seems to me to be a lot more fairer than raising the income tax from 3% to 5%. I think that's absolutely insane.
I would tend to agree, but, you know, and I think we've talked a lot about, you know, we've had different groups on here like the Illinois Policy Institute for the Good of Illinois, you know, the John Tillmans and Maria Rodriguez.
We should get John Tillman back and ask John Tillman. There's been enough time through that we should get him back.
Yeah, you know, and these groups talk about, hey, you know, let's have a forensic audit before you go raising our taxes. Show us you're spending the money wisely, and you know. And as much as I rail, I don't think raising taxes is a good idea. You know, I could almost live with it as long as you balance the other side of the equation. But to just keep spending and then raise the taxes, you know, I'm not even for, as much as I like what Cullerton's saying, because it's saying, hey, this is, everyone else pays taxes, why should these people be exempt from it?
Well, here's what he's saying, too, and this is in the Tribune. Again, you have to read between the lines. He wants to exempt those with modest pensions or rely on Social Security, instead focus on those who could most afford the income tax. So graded is good. And it's a federal income taxes. Illinois is like insane as far as taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, you pay it. Doesn't make any sense. I think, what is it, like 52% of the U.S. citizens don't pay any federal income tax because they're below. Well, that's below the threshold. Illinois, they don't have that percentage in Illinois. You pay income tax.
Right.
That's just basically what it is. But I agree with you. But this is something that, you know, I got to tell you, this is something that I really like. We'll talk about it next week. But because it just came out this morning or yesterday, so I wanted to see what's happening. What did you think about Christie making that shot about Quinn calling him? What did he call him? He said he was absolutely terrible, or he was a disgrace to the state or something. Absolutely terrible. Why are they getting into these snipes? Why are they sniping at each other? It's crazy.
Well, I think, didn't it start out that New Jersey was soliciting Illinois businesses to move there? And I'm assuming Quinn must have fired some salvo back, and then Christie probably went back again. I didn't hear the whole
I have clients that set up corporations in Delaware so they don't have to pay the state taxes, or they don't have to pay the S-corp taxes. So I don't understand. It's crazy. I try to read this. I try to watch this Wisconsin thing. These 14 Democrats still haven't come back to work. Now they're talking. They wanted to meet the governor on the border, and I'm sitting there like, you know. And I watch this story and I try to follow it, and it's like they live in another world. It's back to that crazy guy saying, "Keep throwing it out there." The guy who said 67 years ago, probably the biggest disaster ever in the history of the world. Just keep throwing lies out there, and people start to believe it. I mean.
So what are your thoughts about what's going on up there? Are people starting to sympathize with the unions and the Democrats in this? Do you think people are digging their heels in and saying, "Hey, no, the Republicans are right, the conservatives are right"? What's your take on the whole situation?
Well, I think depending how you ask the question in polls, if you ask somebody, "Do you support unions?" Of course, people support. Very few people are going to say, "I don't support unions." The people that aren't going to support them are business people, entrepreneurs, that aren't going to support them entirely what they're going on. So it's all in how you ask the question. Mm-hmm. So I think 70% of the people support the union, but they don't understand exactly what the issue is. Mm-hmm. And the issue is not we're going to lay people off or we're going to have people take furlough days or we're going to cut the benefits. They're really not. They're asking them to make a little bit more contribution, more in line of what the hell is going on, 8% to 12%, not major as far as their health care is concerned. I have my own, obviously, biased issues about it. I think there's way too many dependent covered under medical plans. I think there's too much duplication of coverages. And they're talking about this collective bargaining, and it's more of a procedural thing with this collective bargaining. It means that you don't have to go back to 25 or 30 unions and get their blessing to negotiate with the state. And that's, I think, what people keep missing. These Democrats, I'm sorry, but November's over. You lost. Okay? So you're basically stymieing the government, and you're causing all these other problems, and you're trying to make Walker a bad guy.
But more importantly, Tim, it's not that they're stymieing government. They're stymieing the will of the people. The people voted, and you have to go with it now. Now, I'm going to tell you what. If there was, and I believe in being consistent in my opinion, and that is if every poll out there was showing that, you know what, Governor Walker, you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing this now, I would tell you that I think he would need to relent on some of the issues.
I don't agree with you. Well, it's over. It's
but it's sort of like
there's no more polls.
But wait a minute.
But
it's sort of like the Obamacare thing, where and I say you have to be consistent. People voted for the Obama. They voted for the Democrats. They jammed Obamacare, which I want to get to in a minute, down our throats. But in the meantime, the majority of people are going, wait a minute, this isn't what we voted for. And if enough people come out and say, Governor Walker, this really isn't what we voted for you to do, I think he should listen. But the majority of the people are saying, we got your back there. So I think he's doing the right thing because of that.
Allow me to retort.
Please.
First of all, in Wisconsin, there's 19 to 14, okay? If one Democrat shows up, they have a vote. The vote's going to be 19 to 14. It's not close.
Right.
It's not even close. With Obamacare, 2 years into it, or a year, it was 2 years.
2 years.
2 years into it, the people obviously were upset. They kicked a bunch of people out of the Senate. Now there's not 60 votes in the Senate as a direct result of Obamacare. I think that had a major influence. And they basically they set history with Congress. They kicked these guys out of Congress. You have to blame a lot of that on this Obamacare. And Obamacare was a major multi-trillion-dollar thing that they put through, and they didn't put it through a vote because they didn't have the votes to do it. They did it through a reconciliation. Because even when you look at this guy Scott Brown, I mean, this is a pivotal thing here. This was Ted Kennedy was in that seat for over 40 years, a Democrat, and when Obamacare went through, I mean, the people of Massachusetts got up and they said, no, it's over with. We do not want this to pass. You see, I think people forget really, really fast what really happened with it. And I don't want to call it Obamacare because it's not. It's more Pelosi and Reid care than it is anything else. And they pretty much said, no, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do that. The president had to, in order to be an effective leader, he had to do this through reconciliation. History will tell whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, I think
so it's a whole different world in Wisconsin.
I just think that whenever you act to circumvent the will of the people, and we've talked about jamming things through during lame duck. Like for instance, this income tax increase in Illinois. If they didn't do it in a lame duck, they didn't have the votes to get it through. At least that's what John Milner said.
Oh, yeah. Told us. Well, no.
They didn't have the votes. So when you circumvent the will of the people, then government isn't working for us. Then, the tail's wagging the dog.
Well, you don't have a very strong governor. Governor Quinn, nice guy. Met him a number of times. He's a nice man. He's not a leader. He's definitely not a governor. And, you got a bunch of special interest people that are running the state. They're not really looking at it. I mean, Governor Quinn could have come out with this forensic audit. He could have sat down. He could have gone. He had plenty of time to do it. He could have gone, look, here's what we're going to do. He's not doing that. You know, they're talking about hiring another 700 people, 675 people, because he says it's going to save on overtime. So it's different. It's just a whole different thing, and there's a bunch of stuff. So we talk about...
And we're going to hire more people to save on overtime when we haven't even sat and looked at where the fat is. Real quick, if we could just shift over to the health care. Michelle Bachmann, the representative from Minnesota.
I don't watch her as close as you do, but go ahead.
Well, what's interesting is in this health care law that was passed, you know, typically you pass a law and then you have to the House has to appropriate the money later.
Right.
And Nancy Pelosi said, well, we have to pass it. That way we can find out what's in it. And what we find out was in it is that all the money, $105 billion, was appropriated in the bill that this House, in theory, has no way to defund now, which the Republicans were saying, hey, you know, we might not be able to repeal it, but we can certainly block appropriations. And lo and behold, now you get into the bill and the money's been appropriated.
Right.
So once again, this is a bill that circumvented the will of the people. This is unconstitutional, Tim. It's unconstitutional. And it's unconscionable on top of it.
I think what they need to do, and I wrote this in my blog a week or so ago, I think the best way to do this is to bring it to the Supreme Court. You know what? Instead of setting up these silly exchanges, instead of setting up all this infrastructure, you had 26 or 29 governors at the White House last week, and they told the president, look, we can't pay for this. This is putting too much of a burden on us. You're forcing us down our throat. And they want to go to court, and they can fast-track this. They could bring this to the Supreme Court tomorrow. In the next 60 days, the Supreme Court can rule. And that would just solve so much BS on this whole... Was that a bad word? I'm sorry. Can I say that?
Well, and you know...
Dave,
I'm sorry, did you say something?
I want to explain to people how this burden hits the states.
I'm more concentrating on Paul than you, Tim.
Yeah,
I want people to understand
you're young,
how
you grow, you get more realistic goals as you get older.
But how this hits the states. Basically what this mandate in the healthcare says, that each state has to increase their Medicaid rolls.
Yeah.
They've made it easier to get Medicaid, which is the public aid, which ultimately is the state's responsibility. The federal government provides them money in order to run Medicaid programs, but they don't fund it all. So for the first couple of years, the federal government is going to send some extra money to the states, but eventually that money goes away, and that whole burden falls on the state. Where's the state? All these states that are already in trouble, Tim, now they have to come up with more money to have more people on entitlements, public aid. When the president stands up and says we need to take on the tough issues like entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, which I don't believe are entitlements, and Medicaid, well, you just set up the biggest entitlement, the biggest increase, the biggest burden on states that has ever happened in the history of the United States. And now you want to say that we need to reform it? Well, you just reformed it. You reformed it right into bankruptcy for every state. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but I'll back off and I'll say, keep it simple. The simple thing is really, I didn't call you stupid. Dave was stupid, but I don't think he's listening to me. Oh, you heard me. Okay, I didn't know. I was just testing you to see if you were listening. But the point is, go to the Supreme Court, get a ruling from the Supreme Court, and then argue these other things. The Obama administration will not allow this to go to the Supreme Court. Now, they just pulled a parliamentary procedure. Did you see this Attorney General in Florida? And she is extremely sharp, and she's really easy to look at.
Okay.
So if you get a chance, look her up on the Internet. She's really, really sharp. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be making a sexist comment, but she is really, really sharp, and she said, look, you know what? They filed a procedural thing to this Florida judge saying by the end of March they want some clarification on his ruling. She said, you know what? Let's just bypass all these things. Let's both agree. Let's make they don't even have to have arguments. They don't even have to go in front of the Supreme Court and present the case. Have the Supreme Court rule all the arguments that have been made at the federal court level, and then the next 60 days, I saw this on Greta after I had read a bunch of it, and said, you know what, come out with a ruling, and then we can decide what has to be done. But the administration cannot afford, because if this gets shut down by the courts, he's done. He will not get reelected as president in 2012.
You know what? If it doesn't get shut down, he's not going to get reelected.
I don't know. I think it's too early. I don't believe that you can decide that yet. I do believe that it's too early. Unemployment dropped. Now, Sam, you were at my house on Sunday, and Sam was there. You know I love Sam. And he said that it's too early to tell, and we have to see what's going to go.
Why did unemployment drop, Tim?
Unemployment dropped because people are looking for jobs now. So it's a procedural thing. This is what Sam had said. There's still the same amount of unemployment people. But you know what? People vote by perception. People see that it's below 9%. The press gets a hold of it and says it's below 9%. And that's what people believe. They don't really look at nobody digs in and looks at things.
But if unemployment is going down and things are getting better, the underlying reason is why. Now, I'm going to tell you from my perspective, I'm a small business owner. I employ 50 or 60 people. Since November, when the House was retaken by the Republicans and sanity was restored, where I do not feel like Washington is going to slit my throat, I'm more likely to take risks. We talk about consumer confidence all the time. I'm talking about if things get better, it's employer confidence, and it's a direct result of the conservatives taking back the House and being in control. So if things get better, it's got nothing to do with Obama. It's got to do with the conservatives stepping up.
I'm not arguing with you.
But I want the reality out there. I want the reality out there, not the perception.
Bill Clinton got credit for having a surplus. When nobody talks about 2 years after he got elected, Congress went red.
Yeah.
Congress, the Senate, and the House went red. They shut down the government for a while, which was a good thing. Newt Gingrich was the architect of all that, and then he went to surplus because he was forced to negotiate. But people don't remember that.
See, and you started this segment out with, if you tell a lie enough, it becomes the truth.
That's the crazy guy.
And we need to step out and tell the truth. And the truth is not that anything Obama's doing is doing anything. In order for this country to rebound and get healthy again, we need to create jobs that perpetuate wealth and create new jobs. The government doesn't do it. There is no government job that creates a job down the road and creates real wealth down the road.
Music?
That's beautiful music.
We could talk about this next week, but Obama's own people have come out and said he wants to do socialized medicine.
Yeah, and a bunch of Democrats are firing against the budget now, saying that the president isn't taking it serious.
Well, thank you, Mike Warren, for coming out and seeing us. And next week we're going to have Tish Powell, another candidate. Welcome, Tish. It'd be great. Know her. We knew her from Ruth Munson. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Goodbye, Paul.
See you, Tim.